Hey, what's going on, everyone? Back with another knife overview. Today we are going to be looking at the Microtech Combat Troodon, and Troodon is after a prehistoric dinosaur. Also means wounding tooth. Here's the box that it comes with. Very standard for this day and age Microtech box. Inside you have the warranty information, as well as a little plastic slip for it, which the knife ships in. This is not my Microtech Combat Troodon. We're actually going to be waffling this on our site, only blades greater than 250, in the next couple days. But, I wanted to give my thoughts on it because I have owned these before, and I'm very, very familiar with them. So without further ado, we will jump right in. All right, the details on the Microtech Troodon, or Combat Troodon, because they actually do make a Troodon that's a little bit smaller than this one. So it features a 3.81-inch blade. Overall, you are looking at 9.5 inches, so this is definitely a big boy. It weighs 5.43 ounces. The version that I have is in Bowler M390 steel. The one that I owned before this was actually an LMAX, but it was definitely an older one from around 2011. The handles on here are going to be aluminum, closed. It is 5.75 inches. The options as far as carry goes, so it does feature a tip down right or left hand carry. It has a glass breaker on the back here, which you do loosen up to flip the clip over, should you need to. Like all Microtechs, this one's actually going to be made in the United States, so that's really nice to see. It features, so this version that I'm going to be looking at today, so it is the dagger style, but there's several other options, including partially and fully serrated. There's also some Tanto ones that I've seen. You can get a more traditional drop point looking one. The MSRP on this one is going to be $535, and I just kind of wanted to make a plug because a few years ago these were kind of hard to come by. They were always out of stock. You could usually source one from Arizona Custom Knives, etc., but they would definitely demand a premium. As of this morning, these are actually in stock at several sites, so I think that that's pretty cool. They've definitely upped production with these. Before we get into my thoughts, I wanted to do a few comparisons. Just grabbed a couple random blades here to show a size comparison, but this is the Microtech Troodon Combat Troodon. I have to stop saying Troodon. As compared to a Chris Reeve Unimzon. Looks like that. And then I also grabbed a Spyderco Spidey Chef. Looks like that. I'll try to just line up the scales there, and then finally, where is it? Somewhere in my pocket. That's a flashlight. The final one I wanted to compare to was just this little Schrade old timer. So as you can see, I mean, the Combat Troodon is a really big knife, and it is actually going to be the largest offering from Microtech in that dual auto, so automatic out, automatic in function. The one knife, the OTF that's bigger than this one, is going to be that Halo. Now they're up to the Halo 5, I believe. But again, as far as like a dual action OTF, the Combat Troodon is going to be the largest offering. So reading about this knife on Microtech's website, so it's actually marketed as a close quarters combat tool. I don't know if, and we'll kind of get into it in my final impressions of this knife, but I would say like the biggest competitor to this knife, or the knife that people are normally searching for, they're usually between this or a Benchmade Infidel. And that being said, if I kind of had to choose, I would definitely go with the Combat Troodon, realizing that it is a little bit more expensive. The Infidel, and I have handled and played with them before, it's just a little bit awkward having to break your grip. The mechanism to fire the knife is actually on this side of the knife, whereas this one is kind of nice because then you kind of get that ambi left or right, and it's on top of the knife. So once you do draw this out of your pocket to deploy the knife, you can kind of keep a more natural grip on it, and it provides a really nice thumb ramp once you do get it out. So if you're kind of between the two, realizing that the Combat Troodon may be a little bit more pricey, I definitely think this is a good way to go, and that's coming from someone who has owned one of these. The next observation that I had about this knife is just the sheer size and realizing that there's a lot going on here to make this a dual action OTF auto. It's huge and it's definitely in your face, even when it's closed. Again, so we're looking at 5 3/4 of an inch when it's closed. This is a very large knife, and certainly, you fire this thing, it definitely gets people's attention just because it's so big, and this knife just absolutely rockets out. One of the funnier things about this knife, I think, is if you hand this to somebody and they're not familiar with the design of this, it's actually kind of humorous to watch them try to deploy this knife, because you do actually need to, what I call, spray a little MAN on this this trigger here when you're pushing it up, and the spring mechanism inside actually kind of just builds and builds potential energy until you finally get to a point where it just rips out. What I've seen though, like first time users, they'll kind of sit here and try to work this. I'm not going to do it too much with this one. I don't want to mess up the anodization, but they'll kind of just be like, oh, it's not working. It's not working. And then finally, boom, she rips out. So just kind of a funny anecdote there. It does take a little bit getting used to, but once you've handled a Combat Troodon, you kind of get used to that ramping up and building of tension before the blade actually breaks. And kind of along the same lines, and I'll just add this into my observation. So people, for whatever reason, and to be honest with you, when I first got my Combat Troodon, the thought really didn't cross my mind, but they love to know, like, oh, like, could you like put this up to something and then fire it and it shoots out and stabs somebody, whatever. I'm not going to do it with this one because, again, like, we're going to be waffling this off. I want to keep it in pristine condition, but if this knife does get fouled on the way out, it will stop. I mean, yes, this thing will blast through a sheet of paper or something like that, but it's not going to like break skin. It would maybe, might puncture you a little bit, but it's not like this thing's going to be, you couldn't like put this up to somebody or something, pull this trigger and then have it fly out. It does actually have a kind of a mechanism to stop that from happening and stopping it from ruining the blade. But what you'll find is if you do end up fouling this blade, it'll just kind of be floating in there, and what you need to do is pull the blade out to reset it. You'll hear like a click, and then this it kind of gets back on the track that it needs to in order to deploy. But inevitably, when you have this knife, someone will ask you like, oh, hey, can you put this up to something, pull the trigger, and then have the blade come out? Sure, you could, but it's not made to do that. You're gonna have to reset it, and it can definitely be a little bit confusing, I guess, for some people. The next observation that I had was, like most all Microtechs, this one does have proprietary hardware on it, realizing that you don't need, like, you could use or get kind of clever to switch the pocket clip over, but all of these small bits right here are going to be proprietary to Microtech, and that's a little bit frustrating, I guess. Not to say that I would ever take this apart. I would definitely, if I needed service done to a Combat Troodon, I would send it back to Microtech, but that also has its own concerns. I did try to send my Combat Troodon back to Microtech because I was missing a screw. I won't get into how I did that, but I eventually, I ended up throwing it in the ocean by accident. It was dark out. I just thought it was something random in my pocket, threw it out, got back, realized I was missing a screw, contacted Microtech, and I don't know, this thing, it's definitely treated as a weapon to the tune of them wanting me to prove that I was a federal law enforcement officer in order for them to be able to send it back to me. And at the time I was living in Virginia, and I wasn't breaking any knife laws or anything like that, but it is kind of a pain in the butt to get these things serviced. So I think that should also go into your calculus, that like, hey, if you get one of these, you probably don't want to be taking it apart unless you're very mechanically inclined, and Microtech does suggest that you send these back, but depending on where you are, it may be a little bit tricky to get it back. And also, the only thing I was missing was a screw. Microtech would not sell me just one of the screws. I would have had to send it back for servicing. From what I've heard, that has gotten better, that if you can kind of send them the serial number and show that you're the one that bought it, they'll send you the part for it. But it's just kind of something to think about before purchasing one of these. The last observation that I had about the Microtech Combat Troodon is going to be this pocket clip, and I will say it's a little bit dated. This is the same one that was on the Combat Troodon back in the day, so again, 10 years older than this one. They were still sporting the same clip, and it does look like a little bit big, a little outdated, but with how wide this handle is, and it's not a really inherently light knife. I mean, thank God they didn't choose to do this in titanium, because this would just be a paperweight. But even with it being aluminum, it's so wide that having a wide or more surface area on the clip does kind of provide a little bit more stability when this is in your pocket. And from carrying these, it is very comfortable to carry in your pocket. But I think that this well-branded clip here is kind of a necessary evil to keep this thing in your pocket and have it be comfortable. And that concludes my overview of the Microtech Combat Troodon. All in all, the Combat Troodon, to me, it sets the standard for dual action out the front knife style blades, and it has a definitive kind of cool factor that goes along with it. Like I said, I mean, you pull this thing out, deploy it, it definitely turns heads because it's so massive and the blade really rockets in and out with such force. As far as this, close quarters combat tool, or how this is marketed from Microtech's website, I really think, without being overly dramatic or anything like that, a fixed blade will beat this every single time. From speed of deployment to simplicity. Again, this has springs in it to be fired, which can also get fouled. It would definitely be a stretch to have this on my kit in lieu of a fixed blade knife, but it's a cool kind of addition. It's really well made, and I don't think you can go wrong with it. If you are looking at a dual action out the front, this is the industry standard. I would get this all day before getting a Benchmade Infidel. The last kind of plug that I want to make for this thing is just be cognizant of, and I hate to have to say this, but be cognizant of your knife laws, because depending on where you are, you will not be able to carry this. If you've ever seen, I'll try to post a picture of what like a California legal OTF looks like. It's almost comical, but then this one in particular being that larger, so we're looking at a 3.8-inch blade, and then having it sharpened on both sides, having it an auto knife. This is not one that you would want to get caught with in your pocket in California, New York, Massachusetts. I mean, before you do purchase this, and some places won't even send it to you, but if you end up getting one of these on the secondary market, realizing it is just a knife and therefore it's a tool, I don't really see the inherent danger. This one is going to be tough, and I would hate to see anybody pick this up, think it's really cool because it is, and then carry it, get into some sort of situation where this is putting you in jail for the night. So just be cognizant of that. Appreciate you all tuning in. This probably will be my last video for 2022. I know I said the last one was going to, but then I got this one in, and I wanted to do a quick overview of it before we waffled this thing off. If you're interested in this knife over the next couple of days, please feel free to join the Facebook group Only Blades Greater Than $250 for a chance to win this thing. So appreciate y'all tuning in. We will see you next time.